What's up, everybody? I'm Sydnee Goodman, and in today's fix, Grand Theft Auto might get banned, more PlayStation exclusives coming to PC, and we're learning a bit more about Superman. Roll the thing. Video games for you, video games for me, but maybe not violent ones for people in Illinois. A state representative by the name of Marcus Evans Jr. is pointing at video games, specifically Grand Theft Auto, as a potential cause for the rise of carjackings in Chicago, and is trying to do something about it. As reported by the Chicago Times, Evans has filed HB 3531, which looks to amend a 2012 law that prevents the sale of some video games to minors. This amendment would ban video game sales to anyone if the game in question depicts, quote, psychological harm and or motor vehicle theft with a driver or passenger present. Yeah, sounds like GTA. So how did we get here? Meet Early Walker. He's from Operation Safe Pump, an organization that puts security guards from the Kate's Detective and Security Agency in places where the number of carjackings are pretty high. And he noticed, quote, similarities in local incidents of carjackings and actions players can make in the video game. Walker specifically pointed at Grand Theft Auto, saying, quote, I feel like this game has become a huge issue in the spectrum. When you compare the two, you see harsh similarities as it relates to these carjackings. Walker contacted Representative Evans in January about creating legislation to address his suspicion. The bill also outlines a new definition of a violent video game, which would be one where players, quote, control a character within the video game that is encouraged to perpetuate human-on-human violence in which the player kills or otherwise causes serious physical or psychological harm to another human or animal. I'm no legal maverick, but that definition feels like it covers pretty much most video games, depending on who you're talking to. And before I launch into why I think this is ridiculous, I do have to give it up to Walker for doing what he sees as best for his community and their safety. Carjacking is no joke. People get carjacked at gunpoint. Nobody wants that. Now, this isn't the first time people have pointed their finger at video games as the source of violence. According to an AP article, there's a number of studies that show there is a connection between violence and video games. In a 2006 study by Indiana University, the research found that, quote, teenagers who played violent video games showed higher levels of emotional arousal, but less activity in the parts of the brain associated with the ability to plan, control, and direct thoughts and behavior. What this ultimately translates to is that, yes, video games can give you a moment of aggression. Think yelling at someone for cheating, or those videos of people breaking their keyboards or controllers after a loss. But there's no evidence that any feelings of aggression actually rises to the doing phase that would lead to violence. In Patrick Markey's research, who's a psychology professor at Villanova University, he's found that, quote, men who commit severe acts of violence actually play violent video games less than the average male. And if you want to learn more on the subject, check out his book, Moral Combat: Why the War on Violent Video Games is Wrong. And I love this quote from Markey. Quote, it's like going to see a sad movie. It might make you cry, but it doesn't make you clinically depressed. Finally, an article on Dana, which is an organization that works on understanding the brain better, makes a great case against the supposed link between games and violence, which is that, quote, video games have spread widely around the world without driving other countries to the levels of violence in this country, aka the United States. Without getting too in the weeds, I will say, coming from a scientific background and being someone who wants to see hard data before decisions are made, it is so frustrating to see legislation being thrown around that doesn't match up with data. And now I will get off my soapbox, figuratively, not literally, because I have to stand this high. Moving right along, PlayStation plans to bring more of its first-party exclusives to PC. In an interview with GQ, Sony Interactive Entertainment CEO Jim Ryan said it was a straightforward decision to release more first-party PC ports, and Days Gone will be the first of those PC ports out in spring. This is a move that deviates from Sony's previous tack on porting exclusives to PC, and Ryan points to the success of their development studios and the, quote, wonderful great games they've made. He says, quote, there's an opportunity to expose those greater games to a wider audience and recognize the economics of game development, and goes on to point to the rising cost of making games as well. Ultimately, I know some people might be annoyed by this decision, but it's never a bad thing for games to become more accessible to other people. It doesn't take anything away from anyone, so sounds good to me. What PlayStation exclusive are you hoping gets ported next? Let me know in the comments. Superman has a long history of saving the world while operating from the sprawling megalopolis known as Metropolis. But what happens when he says goodbye city life and moves back to Smallville with a wife and twin sons in tow? Let's find out now in this sneak peek presented by the CW's Superman and Lois. After the events of the Crisis on Infinite Earths and losing his job at the Daily Planet, Clark packs up the red and blue tights and moves his family of 4 back to his hometown of Smallville. But life has a funny way of turning simple plans into something more complicated. For one, how will his kids adjust from big city life? 2, how will he keep his secret identity both from the townsfolk and his own sons? 3, his ex, Lana Lang, is back in his life. And finally, just who is this guy in green armor and why does he have a crate of kryptonite? I don't know the answers to these questions quite yet, but you can find out tonight during the 2-hour premiere of Superman and Lois on the CW, or stream it free tomorrow on the CW app. And that's Daily Fix. I'm Sydnee Goodman, and I hope your day is as awesome as you are. Now that you're all caught up on the news, check out our latest IGN Now, where we break down the announcement of the PlayStation VR 2. Download the IGN app on all your mobile devices, subscribe to Daily Fix on Snapchat, and for all things everything else, IGN.com.